Okie dokie, Northern Virginia drivers. So today we have a battery that has failed, and we want to show you how to properly and safely jump start your car. You may get something like this. Lights on the dash, things look like they're working, but you go to start the car. Wah, wah, no start. Okay, step one, you're going to need a friend, and that friend is going to need to bring that second vehicle, because we're going to jump start using one vehicle that has a known good charging system to the affected member, the ruined battery. So here's my friend. Step two, jumper cables. Okay, so you want to identify on your battery what is the positive and what is the negative. On this battery, you've got a couple indications. You've got red, you've got black. Sometimes all you have is black and you won't be able to tell. The other indication is you might have a little positive signal and a little negative that display what is the negative side of the battery and what's the positive. So that's the first step, determine where the negative and positive is. Okay, you want to be really careful not to touch cables together while you're connecting to the battery, not to just throw them on the ground. So the good thing to do is have your lovely assistant hold the other side of the cables and apart while you start to connect them. So step one is going to be to connect the positive cable to the positive side of the battery on the car that will not start. You want to make sure you get a good connection here. So you'll see some bare metal of your battery connector. You can't connect it to the plastic because electricity won't flow through that. So you want to make sure there's a good connection, nice and solid on that positive cable. So once the positive cable is hooked up to the car that will not start, you're going to connect your cables to the battery on the vehicle that's going to be doing the starting. So make sure you get a good connection. Make sure you're hooking it to the right side of the battery. Go ahead and hook up your negative side, Ryan. Now, the final step to do is to hook up your negative terminal, but you're not going to hook that up to the battery. You're going to hook it up to the ground of the engine, which could be a piece of bare metal on the engine, could be a piece of bare metal on the body. So if you can zoom in right here, one of my favorite places to hook up a negative cable is on these strut tower bolts. It's a nice bare piece of metal that's not painted, and it's going to provide the connection of electricity through the body. Now the reason we do that is because when you hook up a cable to a battery that is failing, it could be gassing. It could be producing hydrogen gas, which is explosive. And if you have a spark that happens at the battery, you can actually have the battery explode while you're connecting it. So the reason for hooking up the negative cable on the car that you're starting on the ground side, either the engine or on the body, is so you don't have an exploding battery. So another place that you could probably hook the cable to is here on one of these bolts on the engine, but let's go ahead and hook it up on the strut tower, and then let's see how this works. Once everything is all connected, have your lovely assistant jump in the vehicle that's going to be doing the starting. Go ahead and start it up. And you want to let that vehicle idle for a few minutes. And it's even better to raise up the RPM to about 2,000 RPM while you're doing it. That'll allow the engine to do more charging than it would if it was just at idle. Okay, so I'm in the car that won't start. Ryan is holding up the idle in the truck. And let's go ahead and see if we've got enough juice to get this thing going. There we go. Now I'll show you how to disconnect it without causing sparks. Okay, so when we're removing our cables, our car is now started. You remove them from the more charged battery first, and then you can remove them from the car that wouldn't start for you. Now I'd recommend that you do not shut the car off that won't start until you get it to a shop to have that battery checked. Right now the car is running off the alternator and not the battery. Okay, so most technicians are not going to jump start a car that way, and that doesn't mean that you have to either. So you don't have to find a friend or another vehicle. We'd recommend probably picking up a battery jump box that you keep in your home garage. You can buy these convenient ones online, Amazon. Most of mechanics have a really big one like this, and that's not so convenient, especially to keep in your car. The nice thing about battery jump boxes is it does the same thing, but it allows you to turn the box on and off via switch. And that'll help you from creating a spark at the battery and keep you from any explosive gas that might be fuming from a battery that's already bad anyway. You jump start a car the same way. Hook up your positive cable. Hook up your negative cable. There's no power going down to these, so there'll be no spark. Turn it on, and then you can have your lovely assistant start the car. Voila! Okay, so some vehicles, mostly European, like to hide their battery underneath the back seat, in the trunk, underneath the passenger seat, all over the place. It's like, where's Waldo trying to find a battery? So how do you jumpstart one of those cars? Well, interestingly enough, this Volkswagen does have the battery out here in the engine bay, but it has a little remote post for jumping or connecting the negative terminal, and that's what you'll find on cars that don't have a battery in the engine bay. If the battery is located somewhere else, in the trunk or underneath one of the seats, you will find remote posts in the engine that you can connect to that run back to the battery. This one, the negative remote post, is conveniently located next to the battery box. You open up that box and you can gain access to the battery. I would suggest, if you're going to jumpstart your car, number one, that you always check your service manual, and then that'll also tell you where to find that remote post if you need to jumpstart a car that doesn't have a battery in the engine bay. So, happy motoring, Northern Virginia.